Let's talk about Elise Stefanik. Her nomination withdrawn last night. Um, Clearly, even if you don't think Republicans could lose that very red district, Kathy Hochul with capacity to set the date for the special meant they might be down a seat. Not that they would necessarily lose it, but they wouldn't have the seat. There continues to be concern about at least one and perhaps both of the races for specials in Florida next week, the Gates seat and the Waltz seat. So, Sean, is this a Karl Rove induced panic? Is it a Tony Fabrizio induced panic? What is causing the president to suddenly be very concerned about going down an additional House Republican seat?
Well, I mean, the math is obviously concerning. I mean, that's the bottom line. And the question is, to your point,
I'm sorry, the math of the in the
the
House
math on the
margin.
House, whether or not the House will maintain a majority. It's not just about one seat. You got to plan ahead. I mean, one seat, somebody could get sick, family issues. There's all sorts of obvious things that happen, or potential things, I should say. I don't want to hope any of that happens to anybody, but I think that there's a real concern, and two things. One is, Kathy Hochul made it very clear she's going to slow walk this. Two, I don't. I think that the president at some point recognized, hey, I can get somebody else, and I need somebody at the UN, and I don't know how long I can wait. And it's not. I mean, I'm friends with Elise. I think she's a very smart woman, but I also think that it's not like that's a position that she's perfectly tailored for. There's obviously other options, and she could serve again, after the majority gets back up. But to your point, I think the bigger concern right now is that sixth district, where Senator Randy Fine is the Republican nominee for the seat formerly held by Mike Waltz. This is very concerning. I mean, he is not a good candidate. He is not raising money, and conversely, the left is fired up financially. Um, and so I think that there's a concern that if this were to happen and then you would have to pull her after the fact, it would show panic. So I think they're trying to get ahead of it. But it's not a good sign because you could have waited and see how things turned out. So it's a little, to be honest with you, it's still a little mystifying to me because I'm not sure why you wouldn't have waited. In a general election, just to be clear, those two seats are fine. In a special election where turnout is key and you can juice your folks, it's a very different dynamic. But if a Dem were to pull a waffle win, it's an 18-month win and it's just a black eye.
Dan.
Yeah, I think it's a little more than that. I think Sean's right. It's about the margin in the House. It's about the optics and the, kind of worry about what's happening down in Florida. Look, I think there's another thing, which is the game is about to shift to Congress here with this reconciliation package. And it's really going to be kind of the spring and, potentially into the summer. We've talked about before the August recess. What will start to make Republicans nervous is if, let's say, they lose Florida, or even the Republican wins by like 2 points. And then you have a New York district. I actually think Hochul could potentially move that up to make it sooner. If it's a plus 20 or 25 Republican district and you lose it, or again, you only win by 1 or 2, what you get are all these people in districts that are like 10 to 15 plus R, who start to say, if 20, 25, and 30 is a margin of error, I am in trouble. Do I want to go along with this? Do I want to start slow walking this? This is what happened to Democrats in 2009 as they went into the healthcare bill, right? And so I think there's the psychology of like Democrats get off the mat, Republicans start to ask some hard questions.
Well, if you
Not
lose
only
that sixth district in Florida to Dan's, I mean, I think this is what Dan's saying, but I'd be very concerned about getting down. I mean, if then you go into a Dem seat, I mean, that seat where a lot's really on the line,
Yeah.
and so you at least lock Elise in. You know she's going to win, and win big. But I mean, honestly, I feel bad for her because she gave up a House leadership seat. Her staff, for obvious reasons, said, "Okay, we're going to go find another job." So it's definitely a huge letdown personally.
Yeah, I have some indications that not only is it a letdown for her, but she resisted. She did not want to give up the UN slot, having, as Sean you just said, move towards changing things.
Can I make one more point, Mark? I will
Yeah.
say the other tell for me is when and who they announce to fill this. So in other words, if they announce this afternoon that the new replacement is Bob Smith or something, whatever, that says to me that they had a bigger plan in mind, right? That maybe there was a sort of, they were like ready to bring in the lefty.
Yeah.
And so when and how and who, to me, is going to be a big tell. How soon
Yeah.
do they announce, and who is it? Is it some friend of the president where they say, "Oh, this was going to be
Yeah.
easy, just announce my buddy"?
There's some people around the president who don't think they should fill the job, by the way. So I'm not sure they'll announce anybody anytime soon. Um, Look, if they lose next week, and just based on what we've already seen, this makes candidate recruitment for
Yep.
26 much easier for Democrats.
Yep.
Much easier to raise money, to bring in the best possible candidates for the competitive seats. And I will tell you, the mood music amongst Republicans about the need to withdraw Stefanik and what's going on in Florida, the mood music is very dark, very concerned. Not that they're going to lose them, but very concerned. Now, I will say this. I have said many times Congress does not act until it absolutely has to, and sometimes not even then. We've talked about the forcing mechanism for reconciliation. We've talked about the August recess. We've talked about the need to raise the debt ceiling if they included the debt ceiling in the reconciliation. We've talked about the expiration of the Trump tax cuts. We've talked about Christmas. I believe now that there's a possible new forcing mechanism because of the panic or near panic about what's going on in these House races as a canary in the coal mine, which is the forcing mechanism is going to be we have to do it quickly because tariffs and Doge and some other things are not popular. Tax cuts, including the new Trump tax cuts, if they can figure out the square peg in the round hole, tax cuts, tax cuts on Social Security benefits and overtime and all that, tax cuts, energy, regulation reform. Then maybe they just say to folks, guys, we got to get this down and done now. We all agreed this is our agenda. We all want it done. They'll make up a date and they'll get it done. And that could end up being a big silver lining for them, assuming they can execute on it to get that done sooner. And that, of course, allows the president to try to roll into some new type of big project with reconciliation passed, if that happens. Dan, what do you think of my theory?
Oh, I think it's absolutely spot on because look, you have consumer confidence is starting to decline. And what you are getting potentially is if consumers get anxious and nervous, and what do we see in poll after poll? Frustration that there isn't more focus about the economy, right? The last couple of weeks, we rarely talk about Trump, rarely talks about the economy. It's been Ukraine and Doge and, the signal stuff. And like, he got elected because people said he had a good first term on the economy. I want that again. That was the driving thing that Harris could just never, or Biden, penetrate. And if that doesn't get done till the fall, it just can start to spiral. Whereas if they can put the points on the board, they can go to the electorate and say, we passed this, give it time. Those are the things we did for you for the economy. And, I think people will give them a break.
That's the Ron
Sean.
Johnson argument he made.
Yep.
We played that clip the other day. Ron Johnson's basically saying, get the points on the board, get the easy stuff done, stop delaying this, get some relief, get the agenda moving, get people to realize, hey, we got positive stuff happening. Don't slow walk this. I'm becoming more of a fan of this. I think you're right. The tariffs. Look, I applaud the president for his efforts on trying to bring investment back to America and manufacturing. It's great, but it's not going to be a good show. I mean, I think there's going to be a couple weeks, a month, or whatever, where it's not helpful. It's not good, and they need something to point to. I think this might be an interesting game changer.